Well, New Hampshire is not the only place seeing very intense interest in tomorrow's midterm election. Close congressional races across the country could shift the balance of power in Washington.
That includes Senate races in Arizona, Florida, Missouri, New Jersey, North Dakota, and Texas.
And in the House, Florida, Kansas, Kentucky, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania are seeing very fierce battles that could shift seats from one party to another.
Well, right now, a lot of the analysts and polling tend to see that the Democrats will take some seats in the House and maybe even take control of the House. This is going to change Washington and probably divide the country even more. If we have a Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and a President Trump, this is not Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. These are two people who are very different, and the fight will just start right off the bat. And I think the president will probably start his re-election campaign almost as a contrast to what Nancy Pelosi wants to do in Washington. And I think it'll be pretty effective for him for 2 years that he goes into this election.
That intensity reaches down to the state level as well. Across the country, those races are spending nearly as much money as congressional campaigns. Part of a midterm that has also brought President Trump, former President Obama, and their vice presidents straight to the campaign trail.
So let's bring back political director Adam Sexton and political reporter John DeStaso to see how New Hampshire's House races could affect the situation in Washington, gentlemen.
Well, Tom and Jen, if the Democrats are going to retake the House of Representatives, they have to hold on to the 2 congressional seats they have here in New Hampshire. And John, the polls favor Chris Pappas in CD1, but this is one of those seats that Republicans could pick up even if the Democrats do take over the House.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that, there's a lot of energy on the Republican side. One of the things that has disappointed some of the Republicans who are close to Eddie Edwards is there hasn't been any outside help, outside money coming in where they felt that this was within reach with maybe a little more money and more television ads. And on the other side, Nancy Pelosi's PAC has been pouring in lots of money to attack Eddie Edwards. So what does that tell you? Maybe the Democrats are a little nervous about this seat.
Yeah, and John, what are the national groups that we see that are playing here in New Hampshire in some of these races?
Well, there's the House Majority PAC, as I mentioned. That's Nancy Pelosi's PAC. It's kind of the super PAC arm of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. That's playing. There's no commensurate response on the Republican side in that race, and on if you get into the gubernatorial race, I know we're talking Congress, but in the gubernatorial race, the Republican Governors Association has poured in lots of money, about $800,000, to attack Molly Kelly, which maybe kind of mitigates the belief that Sununu has this wrapped up. Otherwise, why would they be spending $800,000 to attack him?
Tom Steyer's Next Gen America as well.
Yes.
That's going to try and match general election level turnout in those college towns in a midterm. Really quickly, John, any other races around the country that you're looking at?
Well, I think we're all going to be looking for at the Claire McCaskill race in Missouri, obviously how Ted Cruz does in Texas, and then that Arizona race, just to get the mood of the nation, really, as we move past this and into the 2020 cycle, which will start on Wednesday.
And of course, as we know, in 2020, Tom and Jen, Jeanne Shaheen is up for re-election. One of the biggest question marks that's out there right now is, will she run again? But again, we can start worrying about that on Wednesday.
Yeah.
There you go, the brightest political minds in the business right there. Thanks, gentlemen, very much.
Congressional candidates have been crossing the state for months now, and voters have plenty of pressing questions at their unscripted stops.
When we come back, there are answers on everything from opioids to cybersecurity.